And today I am joined by BSJ, one of the greatest content creators out there when it comes to educational content. He has been coaching I would say thousands of players and helping them get better over time. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to basically telling you guys what I've been doing for years when it comes to watching pro matches.
Banana slam jam.
Today we'll be looking at some games and hopefully you will be helping us answer some questions that I know a lot of people have when it comes to learning from professional replays and watching pro games. What is your first thing that you would say people should be looking at when it comes to pro games, and how can they, learn something?
So I think going into pro games, you can learn a lot about the different stages of the game. So a lot of times when I look at drafts or I look at like overall strategies coming out from teams, I prefer to look at the game in like different windows. So you have the laning stage, you have the like 6 to 10 minute mark where all the early rotations start happening. You have like the 10 to 20 minute mark where maybe a tower two's gone down and both teams are trying to accelerate their farmers. And then now that you got the 25 minute plus stage where you've got Aegises in the equation, you've got 5-on-5 team fights, and you're looking to scale into the late game. My point being is that I think to myself how every hero fits in every role fits into those different stages of the game. So that's how I've like tried to break it down for people, and I try to break in myself. I see this game, I compartmentalize the game a little bit. So every hero, if you really want to understand at the highest level, this is something you need to strive for. You don't necessarily need to understand today. Every hero has a way they play and a way that they, like a situation they flourish in at every one of those stages. Every hero has a strength in the laning phase. Every hero has a strength once they get level 6. Every hero has a strength once they get their first or second item. And it's all relative to what's going on in the game. So you want a good balance where your entire team and yourself is not like super weak during any of those stages, because what we see in pro matches is like the ideal version, where if you see like tier 1 team versus tier 1 team, you're either going to see both teams completely prepared for all of those stages, or probably what we're going to see today with the games we got lined up, you're going to see one team who can't necessarily get through a certain stage of the game and have the other team who recognizes that really punish it. Like they say, okay, we know you can't fight, your heroes are weaker at this stage in the game, this is what we can do to capitalize. But that applies at all stages of the game. So when I watch pro matches, that's what I'm looking for. The cool thing about learning about heroes is that every hero treats every one of these stages a tad differently. But when you start looking at it in terms of stages of the game, you can it gets easier and easier to understand from hero to hero, basically.
Is it OG versus Nigma
Yeah, OG versus Nigma, game 2.
from 5 days ago or something?
Yes.
All right, then let's just jump into that game.
So with this game, what I think is the message we're trying to show is how much pressure a team can apply when they need to. So a lot of times people say, "Hey, the opponent has better late game than us. How do we stop them from farming?" I play against 4 carries in my pubs, and the game goes long enough and we lose. And I think a lot of what teams like OG do and teams like Secret do is that they ramp up the aggression when they're winning. And the funny thing is, you can also watch, like, I remember the series a day or two ago where OG messed it up, where they were beating Viking GG really handily, and then they overstepped their boundaries. So then you not only see the benefits of playing aggressively in the game we're about to watch, but you can also, stemming from this, watch how they might lose the game playing the same way. So it's not like every playstyle there's like right or wrong playstyles. Every playstyle has a required set of ingredients to make it work. So the first step is for the viewers at home. I know you guys are all going to be playing different positions, right? So it's important to understand how your hero fits into these plans. So the first step is to recognize, generally speaking, which carry on the team on both teams would prefer if the game was just farming. So if you ask yourself between Anti-Mage and Jug, which one only wants to farm from 5 to 15 minutes, hopefully if you're new, you're learning. If not, you'd know that Anti-Mage is the one that really likes to be hitting creeps. So that's the first step I come to. It's like, okay, if both teams just hit creeps, which one is happier with that? Like, I ask myself this question every single game because I'm watching and I'm like, okay, so if I watch this game, I'm gonna emphasize the concept of making educated guesses. So I make a lot of educated guesses saying, okay, I think OG is gonna be the one that tries to ramp up the pace of the game. Like, I think they're gonna be the ones that try to be aggressive, try to make moves, and try to shut down the anti-mage from farming. So that's the first step. Second step is, a lot of you may be asking, why did I choose 5 minutes? So 5 minutes into the game is when the catapult waves spawn. I think oftentimes people have very poor understanding of the catapults. So what the catapults represent is a ton of tower damage. What towers represent is a ton of map control. So when you're looking to shut down farm, a lot of people think we need to kill this anti-mage or we need to run at the anti-mage. But in reality, the way that you pressure people, the way that you win the farm war is by killing their towers. Because if you've killed their buildings, then over time, they're going to have less and less space to work with. So notice how Saksa actually goes to base here as a 4 position, knowing that he needs to be able to help the mid lane because the mid lane's getting threatened by Weehaw. So even though he may not even go there, this is an example where the Clockwork is prepared to help and he ends up coming anyways to make sure that this first DK form is not successful. And so this is what I deem the first step to being high pressure or to start pressuring the opponent is by first shutting down their pressure. So the only time you're allowed to skip this step is if the opponent has no pressure. But if you know you need to consider who applies pressure with catapults every single game, that's a decision that you should be aware needs to be made every single game.
Right. So then at 5 minutes, if let's say, I'm in a random pub and my dude mid, he's being destroyed, and I know they have maybe DP, they have Dragon Knight, they have something that they can push towers very early on, then even if I don't necessarily want to TP there, then maybe I should, because otherwise I'm just going to lose the tower and my mid's going to get dumpstered, and then we're just going to, I don't know, lose the game instantly or have very low chances of winning the game if my dude is getting destroyed on mid. So in that case, you're saying that even if I'm like position 1 or something, I should at least consider going mid.
Oh, that's the big part. I'm glad you used that wording. The at least consider going mid. So the cool thing is, okay, I obviously could try to paint Dota as a simple game, but it's obviously not. So it's like, if you're wondering as a carry or an offlaner or support, if you're supposed to help your mid laner, that's all situational awareness that you eventually develop simply based on the fact that you know you should consider going there. So if you know you should consider helping your puck, notice how they were barely able to fend off the DK when both the puck and the DK were level 6. It's like, what if you look mid and your puck's level 5 and the DK is level 7? Maybe it ain't gonna work. Like, maybe you're just gonna go there and die. Like, maybe it ain't gonna work. So you can not only start to realize, what things you should be looking to help, but kind of the overall situation and parameters that are required for you to be able to help. But those are the type of things that you have to look for after you've started trying to help. It's like, as a carry, I know I should consider going mid. Okay, I'll go this time, and then you die and fail miserably and the game's rough.
A few moments later.
It feels to me like this wouldn't be possible. Like, these moves right now that OG are doing, they wouldn't be possible, or they wouldn't get away with it as much if they wouldn't have shut down this DK first, right? So if DK ends up getting the tower and gets 2 levels on top of this puck, then the game turns completely different, and they maybe never end up invading the enemy jungle and shutting down this anti-mage.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So like the way that I look at Dota is that, and I think a lot of these players do as well, is that if you try to just kill the anti-mage, this is an analogy I guess I'll use. It's like being in chess and just saying, I'm gonna take their king. I'm gonna checkmate him right now. And you're just ignoring that there's a queen, two bishops, a rook, like a bunch of things protecting that king. It's like your goal is to shut down their win condition. That's their king. That's the anti-mage. But you can't just like ignore all the other pieces in the equation. So what OG is saying is rather than shutting down their late game condition at 6 minutes into the game, we're going to try to shut down the guy that's their carry, quote unquote, like their strongest guy at 6 minutes, right? Like that's the guy who's strong. So you can start to think of Dota compartmentalize. What I mean by these like different phases of the game is rather than focusing on shutting down the carry all the time, you just need to focus on shutting down the strongest guy at that stage.
What I really liked about this game is that it just feels like OG did a masterclass in this game on how to stop the enemy carry, and I really like the breakdown that you did for us here, because a lot of times in my own games I feel like, you know, I realize that I need to stop this anti-mage, but sometimes it just feels impossible to do so, and it really sometimes it really feels like, you know, there are multiple steps before you have to do before you can shut down this anti-mage, and OG has really just showed it really well here.
Yeah, and I'll just briefly, guys, like, just remember that you're not supposed to hit these timings as early as OG does. If you guys need to push out bottom lane against the anti-mage 20 times before you finally stop him, then that's what you got to do. You know, like, emphasize what needs to be done first rather than what you're going for, which is shutting down the anti-mage. I think that's the important perspective that makes you feel less panicky, more content, and like aware of what's going on in the game. So yeah, that's my last point there.
Exactly. Cool. Now we're just going to head into a Q&A, and actually I want to start with a question that comes from one of our users, which you briefly looked upon right in this game. There was a question about if you are a carry player and your team is falling behind, should you push lanes or play with your team to like try to fight your way back into the game? And I really liked it because Miracle here kind of showed us exactly what you should be looking at into just going into the enemy jungle, and because that's the safest area of the map. Of course, in this game, as soon as he showed on the lane, he just got destroyed. But in your 2K or 3K pubs, it might not turn out like that. You know, pro players.
The opponent's not going to respond to you nearly as cleanly as
exactly
OG did here. And the goal that what Miracle's doing there is that when you're behind, you kind of have to ask yourself what your hero does, right? Like if Anti-Mage is losing, the only way that he comes back is farming. But if you're like a Faceless Void, you know, maybe the way you come back is by first getting a good chrono and then going back to farming. It's like maybe you could use a large volley of ultimates to fight one time, maybe get like 1 or 2 kills, and then go back to farming. But what his goal on Anti-Mage is that he recognizes where OG wants to play, which is on his side of the map. So he tries to make moves that try to force them away from there. So even if he ends up dying, notice how Miracle is going to consistently put himself on the opponent's side of the map because he knows OG does not want to play there. So as a carry, when you're losing, a lot of the skill that comes in playing the map is by understanding where you think the opponent wants to go and then going somewhere else. Because the last thing you want to do is serve yourself up on a platter where they're not only taking your towers and objectives, but they're also shutting you down at the same time. You don't want them to be able to do both. Notice how OG had to first kill him and then take his towers.
Yeah, and I think we just saw in this OG Nigma game just how important like pushing waves are. So thank you very much for all the good advice. I want to say sorry to all the people who we didn't get to answer your questions. There's a lot.
Sorry guys, I answer really long answers.
No, don't worry about that. It's just there was a lot of questions coming in. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Hopefully you guys learned something and moving on, starting with today, you can also take a look at pro games and realize what sort of things you can take from them and how to break down everything into small pieces and, just learn one brick at a time. And thank you, BSJ, for joining us and showing up today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right.